All right, this should be a very short lesson on how candlesticks are actually formed. So, how are they formed? We have a simple chart here, time being on the x-axis and price being on the y-axis. Now, as we talked about before, a stock price cannot move unless there are transactions. And what a transaction just simply means is a handshake between a buyer and a seller of the stock. So, when we graph out these specific buyers and sellers, we'll get a very simple chart, okay? So at 10 o'clock, we had a transaction at $100. And then at 10 o'clock in a few seconds at $99, okay? And then you get this chart that looks kind of wonky. What this chart actually translates to is what we see as candlesticks. So you can see when the candlestick opened at 10 o'clock, the first transaction was here at $100. Okay, so when the stock price went down and up and down and up and down, as we mentioned in the previous candlestick lesson, we form these candles depending on price and the most recent transactions of that time frame. All right, so at 10 o'clock, we have the opening price here and then the closing price here. And then the highs would simply be here and the low would simply be here. All right, so low and high is very easy to understand. And the open and close determines on if the close is higher or the open is higher than the current stock. So you could see at 10 o'clock, we opened here, made a low right here, high up here, and then closed down here. For the candlestick that forms, we have a simple open, low, high, and close. Okay, so for very simple sake, we actually call these wicks, and we call these bodies. Okay, and what that simply just means is the open to close difference is the body of the candle, and then the high from the close is the wick, the low from the open is also the wick. And then if the red candle, everything flips because your close is actually below your open. Okay, so in this example, we have the price that opened at $100 right here. So we could actually draw out our candle very specifically here on what the candle would have looked like. So we have a candle, and then we have a top wick and a bottom wick. So now what does this candle actually represent? This time period. Okay, so this is going to be a 5-minute period because the candle represents 5 minutes here. And you could see the open of the candle was right here at $100. Okay, because the first transaction happened at $100. The highest price we reached during the whole candle was $101. So the high would be at 101. And then the lowest would be at $99. All right, so this is the low at 99. And then the close was like slightly above 99. So we could call it like 99.50. All right. And this is what is actually happening inside the candlesticks. How are the candlesticks being formed? Simply by reading the current transactions at each time they happen and just plotting this graph into a candlestick. And all we see in the market are these candlesticks right here, and they are telling us all the same information that happened in this transaction.